Do you know what bothers me the most? That we Syrians have to suffer twice. Once, when the multinational terrorists traveled without facing any difficulties from the airports of Europe and elsewhere in the world to Turkey and then to Syria, they slaughtered tens of thousands of civilians while the entire world was watching and tacitly encouraging the onslaught against the Syrians in order to achieve their geopolitical interest. Second, when ISIS is near to a final military defeat, the MSM journalists rushing to interview Western ISIS terrorists and the so-called ISIS brides, who are basically radicalized or illusioned women, travel to Syria to marry ISIS terrorists and to willingly become their sex slaves. Now, why would any woman or a man leave Europe and join ISIS in Syria or Iraq? In my opinion, there are several factors we need to address. Number one, there is an ongoing indoctrination by Saudi and Turkish-funded mosques and religious centers across Europe, which produce radicalized generation willing to shed blood in the name of God. These religious institutions are operating right under the nose of Western governments, and very little or nothing is done to stop it. This could give us an insight to one of the reasons to the gradual growth of far-right groups in Europe. The second reason is the failure of European identity and integration. In other words, when an European person is being taught day and night and through education and media outlets that a German identity or British identity or French identity, etc. doesn't exist, and an entire generation is indoctrinated and grown up without national identity, then some of them will resort to other identities and ideologies to fill the inner emptiness and once again feel belonging to an identity. Here comes the role of the imams and the institutions that I mentioned in the first factor, and attract these lost people and give them identity, belonging, and even a life goal, which is jihad against the so-called infidels. In this same category lies the people with foreign background, the second and third generation Muslims who for several reasons failed to integrate into the European societies and consequently isolated themselves from the other communities, created their own cantons and eventually their own rule of law, which is the Islamist rule. The third reason, which is very important and every European should know, your government and media have demonized President Assad and the Syrian army for many years. They said Assad killing his own people, Assad butchering kids and women, Assad gassing his own people, and most importantly, these atrocities are solely happening against Sunni Muslims because Assad belongs to Alawite sect. This narrative provoked many of these radicals and encouraged them to join the holy war against Assad. Now, after addressing these factors, I would like to say one thing. These ISIS terrorists and their wives came to Syria and killed tens of thousands of civilians. If a Syrian terrorist commits an act of terror in the UK, she should be held accountable in front of the British courts. Similarly, these terrorists should be held accountable in front of Syrian courts. And if you really believe that we should just forgive them and that humanity requires us to send them back to their home countries where they will be sent to rehabilitation centers and then go out and kill more people in Europe or in Syria, then I'm sorry to say, I don't belong to your so-called humanity. My humanity says these people should be held accountable and receive the harshest punishment, and justice should be served.